If you're a fan of college basketball or just happen to be an aficionado of all things stadium related, then chances are you already know that Long Beach State plays in a pyramid, or that Vanderbilt calls a giant multi-purpose room with seats home. These are undoubtedly weird, but I wanted to go down a level deeper to find those college basketball venues which may not be weird in and of themselves, but had unique quirks that made them special. The inspiration from this comes from two of my favorite college basketball arenas and two places that no longer host games, those being McArthur Court at Oregon and Memorial Gym at the University of Idaho, my alma mater. Go Vandals. What made McArthur Court and what made MIM Gym so special is just how different they were from every other college basketball arena out there. You certainly wouldn't call these places weird per se, they were just unique, they were quirky. That brings us to today's topic. While you can't watch NCAA basketball at McArthur Court or Memorial Gym, there are still plenty of places you can catch a game that just aren't your average cookie cutter facility. I'm Cheyenne Hollis, this is the Touchback, and without further ado, here are the quirkiest arenas in college basketball.
Can we just have a basketball game anymore? What the hell?
We begin in Shreveport, Louisiana. Not only does Centenary College have one of the quirkiest places to watch a college basketball game, but it also happens to be the alma mater of one Robert Parrish. Unfortunately, you won't be seeing this school in March Madness anytime soon. That's because Centenary reclassified from Division I all the way down to Division III in 2009. And while they aren't playing at the highest level of the sport, I'm throwing them in anyway just because, well, look at where they play. On the outside, the Gold Dome is certainly interesting. It doesn't quite feel like a place that would host a sporting event. In fact, your first thought might be planetarium, at least mine was. That being said, this alone might not make it quirky enough for this video. However, when you step inside the aptly named Gold Dome, well, this is where things really get a bit peculiar. The inside of the dome, the ceiling of the Gold Dome, it just looks so wild. Again, it does sort of harken to that planetarium type look, but I also can't help but want to touch it because it has this almost mattress-like quality. Like, is it made out of marshmallow fluff? Is it made out of pillow? Like, you can't even tell. And it's certainly not a ceiling of any sort of dome that you will find in college basketball. That is for damn sure. Next, we head to Manhattan, Kansas, and Fred Bramlage Coliseum. Opened in 1988, it is obviously the home of Kansas State basketball, and you can actually find it right behind Bill Snyder Family Stadium. That isn't the quirk, though. The quirk is when you actually look at Fred Bramlage Coliseum from the outside, and you realize it is an octagon. There just aren't many octagon-shaped basketball arenas on the face of the earth. Of course, this is where it gets its iconic nickname, the Octagon of Doom. It's not just the shape that makes it quirky, though. So with Fred Bramlage Coliseum, it is a very bowl-shaped facility, even though it's shaped like an octagon on the outside. That means it has just one main concourse at the top of the facility, and everything just sort of flows down onto the court. No split sections, no different tier seating. It's just, again, just one big bowl of basketball for the most part. Over the years, K-State has added some premium seating at the top of the bowl area, but yeah, by and large, like, everyone is just in a seat and you're just either going down to where you seat and then you're heading up after the game. Finally, you can't ignore the fact that Fred Bramlage Coliseum doesn't even look like a basketball arena from the outside. And it's not the octagon shape, mind you. It's the fact that it just looks like one of those mid-1980s generic business parks. Look at the facade. Look at just everything about it. This doesn't scream athletic facility. It screams low-rise business park. I suppose we can just traverse Bruce Weber's career in reverse at the moment and go from Kansas State to Illinois and their home of the State Farm Center. If you have ever been to a county or state fair, chances are you've at least seen the Gravitron ride at the carnival. It may not be known as that in your part of the country. In some places, the Gravitron's called the Starship. It has a few different names, but you know it when you see it from the outside. When you look at State Farm Center from the outside, you can't help but notice the home of the Fightin' Illini looks extremely similar, uncanny, to the Gravitron or spaceship or whatever you want to call it carnival ride. Honestly, I would be a little concerned entering the State Farm Center thinking that there wasn't actually a basketball game being played. Instead, you were just going to get spun around and around until somebody puked. Look, college basketball has more than its fair share of domed round facilities with seating that seems slightly askew, but none of them come close to resembling what State Farm Center looks like. I cannot help but think the makers of the Gravitron amusement ride saw State Farm Center and then copied it for their design some 20 years later. That, by the way, is the timeline here. State Farm Center opened in 1963, and the Gravitron appeared at county fairs across the country sometime in the early 1980s. And while Illinois basketball has certainly been bad at times, it has never been the vomit-inducing mess that the Gravitron happens to be. Also, people, for the love of all that is good, if you down 3 or 4 funnel cakes, do not step foot on this carnival ride. I don't understand why people still don't understand that. Sometimes in life, when it relates to stadiums and arenas, you just need to take a step back and admire something for what it is. When it comes to Mount St. Mary's and its home of the Knott Arena, well, simply look at it and just, appreciate the one-of-a-kind design found here. They really opted to do something totally different from the cookie cutter designs you see with basketball arenas at this level of Division I. Instead of just leaving things open, they created these sort of boxes of sound on each side of the court designed to, enhance cheering and enhance the noise being made by fans. It does create some weird angles, and at both ends of Knott Arena, they just sort of jut up into the sky up to nowhere. In that regard, it strikes me as being very similar to a medieval church, a cathedral, if you will, where you just have these tall, narrow areas, whereas the church, they would sort of cover the aisle up to the altar. At Knott Arena, they just sort of open up above the court and then go to the area behind the basket. The basketball arena actually makes up one half of a larger building on the campus of Mount St. Mary's. That means functionality is also a part of design, and that is why you get a few doors in weird places and things like that. Seriously though, even with those few oddities, what is not to like about this college basketball arena? Not only is it quirky, but it's probably one of the more underappreciated in the nation. If you were just taking a stroll of the University of Washington campus and you happen to stumble upon Heck Amundsen Pavilion, well, you may not even think that it was a basketball arena at all. Especially if you were coming from the Heck Ed Bridge from the main part of the UW campus. The facility feels very much interwoven into the fabric of the university, whereas a lot of arenas are just sort of added on into what the college has built. Heck Amundsen Pavilion has been there basically since day one. Now, if you do look next door to the arena and you'll see Husky Stadium, then what exactly the purpose of Heck Amundsen serves, it becomes quite obvious. That doesn't take away from the quirkiness of a facility that could just as easily host the school's English department as its basketball team. That to me is what makes this arena so quirky, is that it doesn't necessarily stand out as an athletics facility in a day and age where a lot of schools just have these either generic arena looking places like Washington State and Beasley Coliseum. It stands out like a sore thumb. Meanwhile, over on the west side at Heck Amundsen Pavilion, it just looks like it's been there forever. It's part of the school and they just happen to use it for basketball. Inside is also spectacular. Not only is this one of the oldest arenas in college basketball, but there are just so many other unique elements to it. The windows on one end just add this very charming ambiance to everything that's happening inside Heck Amundsen. I cannot recommend seeing a college basketball game here enough. In the Ivy League, anytime anyone wants to talk about the arenas, it feels like they focus immediately on Princeton's Jadwin Gymnasium, and I do get that to a certain extent. The weird dome element to it. It just is quite different. However, I feel that rival Yale and its Payne Whitney Gymnasium are far quirkier than what's found at Princeton. That's because you just don't see arenas basically anywhere in the United States with seats sloping this steep. The fans are literally right on top of the action. Honestly, every time you look at the seat sloping, it almost feels like it's coming in close to a 90-degree angle in some places. Then you have the two areas at the end with the bleachers. You've got a few balconies with people looking over. I mean, honestly, just everyone is basically on top of you during a Yale basketball game, and that is certainly a quirk worthy of this list. It took me a while to put my finger on just why Santa Clara's Levy Center felt so familiar to me. It felt like a place I had been before. I just always got this case of deja vu when I went there. Then one day, it finally dawned on me. The Levy Center just looks like this mini version of the San Siro, the home of both AC and Inter Milan in the Italian city of Milan. The shape, the exterior, the steel beams, the circular pillars, they just have this odd similarity between them. Obviously, though, the Santa Clara version is much smaller, has a lot of windows, and hosts basketball instead of soccer. As for those windows, you know, normally I'm a big natural light guy. If you have a basketball arena and you can get some natural light in there, I think it's better. I think it just looks a little better. But for some reason, it just doesn't play at the Levy Center. I can't even quite tell you why that is, but the one day game I've seen Santa Clara play at home, it felt weird. There was just something about the balance of the natural light coming in to the Levy Center that I can't explain what exactly I didn't like about it, but it just wasn't doing it for me. And usually, again, like I said, I kind of like it when natural light flows into an arena. On the plus side, though, at least I've actually got to see a game from Santa Clara and the mini San Siro. When I was in Milan and traveled to the real deal San Siro, well, no one was playing. I took a stadium tour and they happened to be setting up for a YouTube concert, which means the pitch was all tore up and it was just a giant sand pit. That was a bummer. After a season as Nomads, the Albany Great Danes returned to their home of the Broadview Center in 2023 after it had gone extensive renovations and a name change. A lot of bells and whistles were added. They spent $12 million trying to improve this arena, and by and large, they have done so. However, there was one thing they couldn't quite do anything with, and that was the exterior. It, quite frankly, just looks like a giant box. I really just don't know if you can get any more square than this college basketball arena. It should be noted that designers doing the renovation, they did try to make it a little more round, at least from the inside. Before, again, those changes, it really was even boxy from the inside, but they've since rounded off some of the seating, filled in some of the corners, so it's at least a little less cube when you're inside watching a game. Also, some of the entrances to the Broadview Center do have this sort of bunker-like feel to them where you're actually going underground to get into the arena. To that end, when you look at the Broadview Center, you can't help but think it looks like a Borg vessel from Star Trek that's just got beached into a hill. And while Albany basketball has been good from time to time over the past few decades, it's safe to say resistance isn't futile when you're playing the Great Danes. We now turn our attention to Scottie Pippen's alma mater, Central Arkansas. So back in the day, at the Bears' home of the Ferris Center, they had one of those really square, bulky scoreboards above center court. That didn't really make a heck of a lot of sense, though. There isn't a huge amount of seating behind either basket, so you didn't need a four-sided scoreboard when two of the sides weren't being seen by anyone. The Central Arkansas administration did have a solution to this, albeit it is one that you do not see a lot of. The school opted for a long, skinny scoreboard that runs parallel to the sidelines. It's mostly ads and extremely low tech, by the way. No video boards or anything like that, although the school did put a video board behind one of the baskets. If I'm being honest, I've tried looking for one of these long skinny scoreboards at another college basketball venue, at least Division I, and I came back with nothing. There may not be a lot happening at Central Arkansas's Ferris Center, but there is no denying that that scoreboard is certainly quirky. Is there a better naming rights agreement than Jersey Mike's putting their name on the Rutgers basketball arena? Maybe there is, but you'd be hard pressed to find it. Anyway, when you actually look at the facility itself, you can't help but think it's just all angles and weird shapes. Like, not a lot here makes sense from a design standpoint. It's almost as if it was designed by MC Escher himself. On the two ends, one's getting cut off by a roof slope, and then one just stands straight up. And then you look in the corners and you've got like posts and stairs. Like, what is going on here? Even from the outside, the layout, the design, you would have no idea which way the basketball court is running inside this building. This shape, this peculiar shape, everything about this is just so quirky. That being said, Jersey Mike's Arena may not be in the shape it is today for much longer. Rutgers has announced renovation plans that would transform the facility in the years to come. Believe it or not, the University of Dayton Arena is actually on my bucket list of places I want to watch a college basketball game. Now, I know a lot of folks out there are saying Dayton, really? But hear me out. Every time I have watched a game from this venue, I am just drawn to the two balconies behind both hoops. One side features suites and the other is lodge seating. These, at least for me, seem like they would be absolutely awesome places to watch a game of basketball. Again, to sort of feel like you were almost on top of the action. A very weird, a very quirky perspective that not a lot of places offer. Why more college basketball arenas don't try to do something similar is a mystery to me. I mean, the University of San Francisco has done something, again, just a little bit similar along their sidelines, but placing this behind the baskets, traditionally places that have the least popular seating, is a great idea. The two balconies, at least for me, is the best kind of quirk, to say the least. When I think of the University of Dayton Stadium, it's unbelievable that this isn't a place that doesn't get talked about more. You have to think that Ohio State is jealous over the fact that Dayton got things right and they got things so horribly wrong. I mean, the Buckeyes' home of Value City Arena is known as a generic, dull, lifeless mess. It goes without question, nobody says that about the home of the Flyers or home of those really uninteresting and totally unnecessary NCAA tournament first four matchups, but you can't do anything about that, I guess. There you have it, some of the most quirky college basketball arenas in the country. If you would like to know more about what stadiums were outdated by the time they opened, well, you can check out the video in the upper right-hand corner of your screen. Thank you for watching this video, and until next time, I am Cheyenne Hollis. This is the Touchback, and hashtag take it out to the 25.